Thank you so much to everyone that joined us today, and welcome to this month's OSRL webinar. We have a really exciting topic, a really relevant topic to today's workings in the industry. We're going to be talking about how to manage incident management team when it's all virtual, when everyone's working remotely from different locations, and how you can ensure that you're still effective and you're still working to the best of your abilities, even when you're not sitting in the same room. And to do that today, we have a very special host with us, Tristan, who's with OSRL, and he has loads of experience to share with you guys. So I'll pass it on to Tristan.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ines, and a very special presenter today. Wow, you flatter me, you really do. But like Ines said, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tristan Barston. I'm based in the OSRL Houston Technical Office, and my role is really as a go-between between our members and clients and the rest of the OSRL team. So what we're going to talk about in this hour is what we have seen happen during either actual responses or incidents where the incident management team has been either completely virtual, so nobody's in the same room, or a hybrid with certain people in the same room, other people operating remotely. So today, it's not a webinar about software. With software, what we found is you use what works for you, whether that's Microsoft Teams, whether that's Zoom, whether that's another video call, whether that's Yogurt Pots and Stream. What is needed is an understanding of what people have to do during that initial response. So as we go through today, there's going to be a live poll in about 2 minutes and questions and answers at the end. What I will do is please ask you to keep your mics muted and put any questions that you have in the chat as we go through the webinar. Okay, perfect. So picture this scenario. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're on call. The phone buzzes, half awake, you answer the call. What you'll have is a report from a site or operation informing you that they've had a problem. Obviously, at this time in the morning, people aren't at the facility. Depending on the location of your team, you've then got to get everybody together and decide how you're going to support the operation on site. But one of the most important things to do as early as possible is identify who is in control. And when we think about who is in control, it's understandable that different people are doing different things. So your incident commander for this particular operation, they're probably at home. Your operations lead, they could be in another city. Planning, as it says, could be traveling. Your logistics, they're just offline. But if you're anything like me, so I live in Houston, as you can tell by my strong Texas accent, but our corporate team are in the UK. So 2:17 in the morning for me is 8:17 a.m. for them in the UK, which means they've just got into the office, they've had their caramel soy latte coffee, and they're all pepped and ready for the day. So they're going to be asking questions straight away. So what we need to set as early on as possible is the control point. So who is managing the incident and who is setting the expectations? So what I want you to do now is in the chat, answer the following question. If an incident occurred right now at your facility, How would your organization activate your incident management team? So would you request, first of all, everybody to come in to one location, one emergency operations center? Or B, would you have some people come in and some people remain hybrid, remain virtual? C, fully virtual, at least for the first operational period? Or D, not sure. So I'll give you just a minute to answer that. Okay, excellent. So looking at the results, there's a lot of Bs in there, which is obviously the hybrids. So you've got people in the command center and then people operating virtually. And there's a couple of C's in there as well. No D's, which is wonderful. I'm very, very pleased to see that there's no D's. So if you think about it, for the first hour of any response, especially one that happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, then your management team, your incident management team, are very unlikely to be at the facility. It's almost certain that the first hour is going to be virtual. The notifications are going to be made by phone or video or email, however it is set up in your plan. So what we're going to talk about today is what needs to be done in that first hour. What does the good practice look like for that first hour? So the reason why most incidents start virtually, obviously there's travel time. People have got to come in from their homes, from where they're staying, into the incident command post. Secondly, the way many organizations are structured now is you have a core team that may not be located at the site. More and more people are working either virtually or hybrid roles, where they spend a certain amount of time in the office and a certain amount of time away. Next, obviously, offshore operations, where there is a limited amount of staff on that platform, on that site. A lot of the organizations we work with, if they have an incident, it falls into multiple jurisdictions. So that means any incident that occurs either spans borders, crosses regions, impacts other operators, impacts other activities. And obviously, if an incident was to happen early in the morning, they wouldn't have their staff, their incident management team on site as well. Many organizations that we work with are global, international oil companies, have different technical skills and people located in different areas around the world. And then last but not least is the executive ability. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next slide, because what we want to do is make sure that most organizations discover mid-incident that virtual activation is usually a reality before it becomes a strategy. So they have to do it before they've worked out exactly how they're going to do it. So what we want to make sure is it's very, very carefully planned, that we know who we're contacting, why we're contacting them, and what we expect them to do once they've been contacted. One of the most important things to notice when we're doing drills, when we're doing exercises, and actually when we've been on incidents, is a meeting is totally different from a group of people in an incident command post. Now, you're probably sat there thinking, duh, Tristan, thanks. I'm so glad I joined this webinar if you're telling me stuff I already know. So what we're going to look at is the difference between the two. What we are trying to achieve virtually is a virtual command post. In a meeting, people are talking. There can be updates without structure, and everybody waits their turn to talk, hopefully. In a virtual command post, there is clear leadership and roles. There is managed information flow, which means everybody knows what they are doing in that virtual command post and what is required of them. And then falling out of that, obviously the decisions that are made and tracked. One of the big things that we've noticed during the early stages of an incident is that different people do not have the necessary authorization to start mobilizing additional resources. OSRL recognized this a long time ago, which is why we have our technical advisor service and our duty managers. What that means is that anybody within the organization can call OSRL and get technical advice and support over the phone. They can also, in discussion with the duty manager, request that personnel be sent to their site. And in membership agreements with OSRL, people can get 5 of our technical advisors for up to 5 days, free of charge, which means we pay for flights, visas, accommodation, food, all the rest of it. So there is no cost to the organization, to the member organization. Why that's important. So a drill that I ran earlier this year, virtually, the incident occurred. And if you think about it, what's one of the biggest issues we have early on in an incident? It's obviously we're trying to gather as much information as possible about what actually has occurred. So what that requires is getting people on site in some kind of vehicle, whether that's a boat, whether that is a truck, whether that is an aircraft, to go out and visibly identify what is going on. But obviously mobilizing an aircraft, you might have a contract, but there is a cost involved in that. And what happened in this exercise is the incident commander didn't have the financial authority to book the aircraft. That had to be done by the finance team. And the finance team at that particular time were doing something else. So the approval for the costing never came through in the 4 hours that we were doing the exercise. So one of the most important things that we need to do in our planning process is make sure that what we are asking people to do, the tasks we are asking people to do, they have the necessary authority to do without having to go and find additional approvals. Another thing we've noticed is there's a technology trap. If you're anything like me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you get 5 or 10 emails a day with the latest and greatest oil spill or emergency preparedness software or dispersants or sorbent material, never been thought of before, and this is wonderful. And they sound great, and some of them are very, very good. But what we've seen is during drills and exercises, if people feel that they're losing control of their team, their immediate reaction is, oh, we need another tool, another channel, another dashboard, another standing call. But what we find is each one of those platforms adds additional noise, an additional thing to think about before you start making decisions. What we are trying to do in the early stages of the incident is simplify the decision-making process, simplify the team, simplify the process, simplify the actions. We are looking for good leadership and good management, because as it says at the bottom of the screen, management creates control. What I don't mean is that everything has to go through the corporate team, the incident commander. It means that you run sort of a decentralized command process where you have your personnel on site who have the necessary authority to do everything that they need to do in mobilizing their equipment, in getting the resources they need. And then your incident management team who can then look ahead to see, okay, how do we carry this on to the next operational period? So, what have we seen? What challenges do we see in virtual incident management teams? The first, the biggest by far, is leadership. I've been in, and I'm sure everybody else has as well, exercises where you've got a really strong incident commander and they're able to pull the rest of the team through the incident, whether that's because of their experience, because of their knowledge on how to get the best out of their teams, or whether it's just down to their pure enthusiasm. The trick is to move that from your in-person leadership role to a virtual leadership role. So how do you do that? One of the main ways to do that is through coordination. Your leader has to keep your different functions all in step, all working towards this common goal. And the way they do that is by controlling the flow of information. So rather than sending all the data available to everybody, making sure that the right people are getting the right data to answer the right questions. One of the key challenges for your incident commander running the virtual team is this situational awareness. When you're all together in a room, it's easy to walk around, tap people on the shoulder. Hey, how are you going? What are you working on? What are you doing? So how do we do that in a virtual space? How do we contact and have those offline discussions to make sure that people have all the necessary information, because that will drive their decision-making process? And one of the key things that we've seen here is to set clear targets or goals for everybody so they know, well, I've got this amount of time to complete this task. If I can't because of a certain reason, then this is the action I undertake. So my next meeting might be at 10 o'clock. Before then, I have 3 tasks to achieve. I can do the first 2, but the third, I need additional resources. So then I contact the person, the incident commander, or support from logistics or planning to move forward. And then last but not least is the human factors. It's easy, or at least it's easier, to keep engaged with people when they're in the same room as you. If I was to turn everybody's camera on right now, and we have 66 people on the call, I don't believe all the 66 people are looking intently at their screens right now. They might be checking their phone, they might be answering emails, they might be making coffee, feeding the dog, whatever it is. What we have to work on is to make sure that people aren't getting distracted. So when we're talking about distractions, let's have a look at how some of the high performing teams that we've seen overcome these issues. First of all, strong leaders. These are people who can make their presence visible in a virtual world. So how do we do that? Virtually, leadership only exists when it's heard. Establishing commands, stating intent, setting priorities, giving direction early. So what we've seen is when in my experience, when the exercise starts, your incident commander comes on, gives a very brief outline of the incident, and then starts talking about their objectives for the first 15 minutes, for example. What I've seen work well is the incident commander sets out their objectives, then goes around the room, makes sure everybody knows what it is they've got to achieve and any issues that they think they might have. And then there is a 15-minute break between that initial call and then the follow-up call about how the different teams are working on their objective. What we want to avoid, or what I've seen that hasn't worked well, is the incident starts, everybody gets into the virtual incident command post or incident management team room, and the first 10 minutes is a long rambling discussion where people are going back and forth and nothing's really known, and it's all, well, you know, we could do this or we could do that. In the first 15 minutes, it is important, I feel anyway, for the leader to set the tone. And then the discussion can come afterwards. So, thinking about that, obviously great leadership isn't a one-way street. It's not one person standing up in front of everybody else and goes, follow me. Okay, it's a two-way process. So we've already said that the team needs strong leadership and a clear set of objectives from the incident commander. So they need the direction. First of all, what is it that we are trying to achieve? Even if it's something as simple as, in the first 15 minutes, get me a clearer picture of what's going on. Then we're looking at priorities. What is important and what needs to be addressed early on. because those priorities, they drive the decisions. And then last but not least, I've got confidence down there. One of the brilliant things that we've found about virtual incident management teams are the fact that drills and exercises now become really easy to run. You can test little single things rather than having to organize a grand event with 100 people in a room with all the necessary logistic support that goes into that. Now you can do a 30-minute exercise where you're just testing, okay, this is our logistics capability. This is how we contact the Civil Aviation Authority and ask for low overflight approval. This is how we know that the people within the Environmental Protection Agency want the report to approve the further use of dispersant. Things like that. So if you think about it, we're looking for direction, priorities, decisions, and confidence in our incident commander. And the fact that the incident commander also has to have confidence in their team. And that confidence, I've always found, only comes from experience. So, the power of intent. If we've got any ex-military people here, they will have heard of the term commander's intent. If you think about what good leaders are people that give you an objective and then have trust in you to go away and work out how you're going to achieve that objective. They have the confidence in you that your actions will achieve what it is that's required. And even more so, if you can't, then you will raise that early on. Because what happens, as the question's there on the screen, what happens when the team doesn't know what's important? Then they lose focus. There's competing priorities, or duplicated effort, or task overload when they try and do too much. Commander's intent lets people act without the feeling that somebody's looking over their shoulder. If you give people the trust that you feel that they can achieve a goal, they are more likely to achieve it. And that's true virtually and in person. So, this is another slide that I've stolen from Jocko Willink, if anybody listens to his podcast, where his term is discipline equals freedom. I've changed it to structure creates freedom. I know it sounds backwards, but people think that structure restricts decision-making. Responders often see processes as bureaucracy. But if you think about it, when roles, meeting rhythms, and processes are already agreed, nobody has to spend the time that they should be focused on the incident, negotiating how things work. All their energy goes into the incident itself. If you can reference virtual incident management team or incident management system guides and planning guides beforehand, then you know what your role is, what it is you're looking to achieve, and what goal everybody is working towards. Just because you're virtual doesn't mean that you should throw your incident management system or your incident command system process out of the window. It becomes even more important to follow the process when you're virtual. So everybody understands this is the next step in our planning P or planning cycle. They understand exactly what their role is. They know when the next meeting is. They know what they have to develop prior to that meeting, what's going to be expected from them, and how their actions and the tasks they complete fit into the overall response picture. One of the biggest issues that I've seen and my colleagues have seen with virtual command posts is they can get really messy really quickly. If you think about modern technology, yes, it's a wonderful thing. It has helped us to be more accurate, quicker, and draw on a wider range of information. But it can also get very messy. When I first started work back in the 1980s, nobody was calling me at 2 a.m. with an issue. But now, especially with global organizations, we get emails, calls, Teams meetings, WhatsApp meetings, or verbal requests at any time of the day. And anybody within an organization or even outside of the organization can have an idea and send off an email, give somebody a call, any of those. What that means is the information overload can really detract people from their task ahead. It's this fragmentation, not lack of information, which is the greatest enemy of a virtual incident management team. If you think about the different ways that people can get hold of you, when you're trying to work, when you're trying to complete a task, how many times have you been interrupted by a call or an email or anything? It happens all the time. So one of the key things that I've seen works really well in virtual incident command systems is the fact that they set meeting times. Yes, if there is an emergency, absolutely, this is the number that you call. But outside of that, the meetings are at this set time. So when we think about what's the antidote to this fragmentation, it's a pipeline. Information is validated, turned into a shared understanding, and then moves into the decision-making process, which drives our actions. The shared understanding is the most important part of this, believe it or not. Most teams jump from yes, they get the information, yes, they find it's true, they use that information to drive their decision-making process, and then they act. But that shared understanding, does everybody know what the information, the key people who need to know what that information is, understand what actually it means? So when we're thinking about information, it normally comes in three buckets. The first bucket is known, verified facts, things that we can be absolutely sure of. The second is unknown, so gaps in our information that we already know. And last but not least, we have assumed information. That could be based on our experience, that could be based on previous incidents or previous exercises. High-performing teams label each set of information in one of these three groups, and they will say beforehand, this information is known, this is verified, or we assume that. What I've seen really good teams do is in their communal situation board, they have a known, unknown, and assumed section when it comes to information. And whether that information is virtual or physical, they can put the different information in different areas and then move it as more information becomes available. So what they're trying to do is build situational awareness throughout the team. So with virtual incident management teams, one of the problems with them is everybody is separate. So a lot of effort has to be done by the incident commander or their deputy to make sure that everybody is situationally aware of what is happening. There's shared understanding. Everybody holds the same picture of what's happened and what that means. Tied into that is the goals that they're trying to reach. What is important? What needs to be done now? What needs to be focused on now? And then last but not least is this shared reality, one version of the truth. What information have you been given that is verified? What information can you make sure is absolutely accurate? It's not a tool, as it says there. This is a discipline. And again, this isn't a technology question. Yes, you can get software where everybody's working on a common operating picture. But if you simplify that decision-making process down, if everybody knows the plan they're working to, the goal they're working towards, I've seen somebody snap a photo on their phone and send it to the team via WhatsApp. And that's worked just as well. So, believe it or not, really good teams communicate less. There's less of this, oh, I'll just reach out to this person. Oh, just not. But what they do is they communicate clearly, deliberately, and purposefully. So they know they have a limited amount of time to get the information that they need out to other people. Again, a good incident commander doesn't need to keep looking over people's shoulder to see what they're doing. They don't require constant updates, constant meetings. The people doing the tasks don't have constant interruptions. The incident commander has faith in his team or their team that they can do the task that they've been given and will only come back to them either when the task is complete or something major has happened where they need additional support. When you walk into an emergency operations center, incident command post, sometimes it's all quiet and people are working away and you know they're achieving the task that they've been given. So when calls do happen, when everybody gets together, when there is a briefing, when there is a meeting, this goes for in person as well as virtual, but it's very, very important for virtual meetings, is the incident briefing sets the baseline, the situation, as known, the objectives currently identified, the tasks that you want people to carry out, and who is working in your team. We're looking at the fact that if the information isn't briefed, then it isn't known across your team. And the decision-making myth. We need more information before deciding. But the truth is, incident leaders rarely get complete information. There is a rule called the 40-70% rule. With an incident, you're unlikely to get 100% of the information that you need. If you have 40% or less of the information you need, you're guessing. But unfortunately, with emergency response operations where time is of the essence, if you've waited until you've got more than 70% of the information you need, you've probably waited too long to make a decision. But what's one of the biggest drivers to whether we make good decisions or bad decisions? It's experience. If we've had previous experience making decisions under stress with the operation that has had the incident, it is likely that our decisions will be better. Now, I don't want anybody here on this call to get their experience through actual events. I'd much rather you get your experience through well-designed and run exercises. And like I said, one of the benefits of the virtual incident management team is you can run a very quick exercise at any time, anywhere. Because the truth of the matter is, perfect information never arrives. I know it's a long time in the past now, but if there's anybody on the call that was involved in the Macondo incident back in 2010, obviously lots and lots and lots of people, lots and lots and lots of information. But even in the 4.5 months I personally was involved in that response, we never got perfect information. There was always some unknown or something that was assumed. Because as it says there, the lines never meet. And the longer you wait thinking you'll get information, the longer you'll postpone making the decision and taking action. So when we're thinking about information, we need to know what we're going to do with it. So when we're making our decisions, we can quickly decide, what do we know? What is verified facts? What don't we know? Identify those gaps. What matters most to us? As you know, not all information is created equal. If you think about oil spills, think about the things that are really important for you to know. Important for you to know is obviously product type. A tricky one for everyone is the amount of product spilt. Wild variations can come back. But what I've seen work very well, rather than people focusing on trying to work out the actual barrel, litre, gallon, whatever it is, amount that they think they've spilt, they come back with, this is the impacted area right now. So the first report comes in at, let's say, 2 o'clock, and the impacted area is 10 square meters. Then an update's given at 30 minutes later, and the impact area has now grown to 20 square meters. People can picture that rather than saying, oh, we've spilled, we think, 10 barrels. Because what we're trying to drive is what matters most. So how is this incident evolving, and what do we need to do? And last but not least, what happens if we wait? What's the price of delay? Because waiting, not making the decision, is a decision as well. But these 4 points, we try and keep as simple as possible. Simple, practical, and usable. And as it says, at 2:17 in the morning, you want something that's very simple to follow. And then last but not least, we've got to maintain the tempo of this decision making. If you think about the response tools that we have, certain tools are only available to us at certain times of the response. A response window closes, whether that's using dispersants, whether that's using in situ burning, whether that's protecting an area before the oil gets there. We've only got a certain amount of time to do that. Delaying our response, delaying our decision making has a knock-on effect. We lose opportunities. There's delays in responding. So if you were to call OSRL, you've had this incident at 2:17 in the morning, you call our duty manager at 2:30 in the morning, we can start identifying flights and people. So by the time commercial flights start leaving, let's say, Miami Airport, we've already identified who's going, what flights they can get on to come to you. So it's likely to be the same day. If you delay and call us at midday, unless it's a popular route, it's likely we can't get anybody on a plane until later in that evening. And then they won't be ready to start working until the next day. So you've already had 24 hours delay. And last but not least, nobody likes waiting for information. I love our executive team and our corporate team. I think they're very good people, but I know they get very frustrated if they don't get all the information that they need. And the worst thing is, as it says, silence gets filled. Yes, outside of our agency or organization can get filled by mediators, regulators, and rumors, but also inside the organization as well. Silence gets filled by the demands on you for more information. And we want to avoid that. We want people to know, hey, at this time, we will get an update. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the human factors. On camera, everybody looks fine. You can pop a filter on, you can blur your background. But things that you will notice in people when they are working in the same room as you still occurs when they're in virtual setting as well. People get tired, they get stressed, they get confused, they feel overloaded with the amount of tasks that they've been given. And what that drives is disengagement. People get, for want of a better term, burnt out. And that's what we're trying to avoid. In the room, like it says, you'll see it instantly. But on a screen, people hide it. So it's important that as part of your meetings, you also do a check-in with people and that people feel comfortable to say, hey, I need to take a break, or hey, I need to do this, rather than keeping their struggles to themselves. So how do we manage people under pressure? First of all, mindset, the state they do it in. You might get somebody like me. I'm incredibly enthusiastic about everything that I do. But does that make me a good team player? Sometimes not. Sometimes I am rushing where angels fear to tread, and we'll work it out when we get there. That is not helpful in certain situations. So as your incident commander, they should have good knowledge of the team under them. And then next, you've got skill set. What's this person's experience? How can they make decisions? How can you support them? So the structure, the system that they work in, is it simplified so people don't have to worry about who's reporting to them or who they're reporting to. It's very clear and simplified. With in-person incident management teams, you can get away with a bit of complication because everybody's in the same room and they'll thrash it out and come to a conclusion. With virtual teams, keeping it simple and as a process, this is the information we have, this is verified, this is what we've assumed, this is the gaps we have in our knowledge, these are the decisions you've got to make. That process becomes absolutely vital, and the best teams work to that process. The knowledge of the team. One of the courses that we run at OSRL is performance under pressure. So you can't see what is affecting your team members, or it's difficult to see. But people can be divided into two main groups. First of all, you get people like me, the redhead, tunnel vision. But we can also get overwhelmed quite quickly. What we're trying to do is move to the blue head. Why is this important? Why does this deserve a slide in this presentation? Well, if you think about it, if your leader remains this calm, clear, deliberate person that sees the whole picture, they're on task, they make decisions with intent, then that is likely to spread throughout the organization. So recently, we ran an exercise for one of our members that went through a virtual incident management team operation. It didn't start at 2:17, that was just the timing that we used, but we made sure that first of all, we sent out a very, very basic report of what had happened. And then we timed how long it took the duty manager, their duty manager, to then call to the different groups to make sure that they knew, hey, this is what has happened and this is what is required of you. Now, if you receive a call at 2:30 in the morning, then what's required of you needs to be very simple. So in the brief that was given by this duty manager, it was simply, this has happened at this location. We need everybody to be available on this platform. Then it was 3:15. That's when the first briefing was given. But the duty manager and the incident manager prior to that call worked on developing the information that was required, the gaps in the information, and a basic understanding of what their initial objectives were like. And what I really liked in this exercise was their all spill contingency plan actually had 10 objectives already written in that they could either say, yes, this is applicable to this situation, or no, it's not applicable to this situation. Because what we're looking to do is make sure our leadership appears early. There is an incident commander that is known. The structure is already detailed in the plan. how information was shared was identified. There's going to be a call at 3:15. The objectives were developed prior to the call, and then people were asked for feedback. Do these objectives make sense? And then last but not least, because there was this working together of the team, the situational awareness throughout the incident management team was very high. Everybody knew what had happened. They knew what their role is. They knew what the objectives were. And out of that, they knew the tasks that they had to achieve. Now, nothing in this list has got to do with technology. And in this particular exercise, they use Zoom, which isn't my favorite, but it worked absolutely perfectly well. So, the 6 principles of virtual incident management team success. First, process before technology. You can have the latest and greatest video platform that makes everybody look like supermodels. But unless you have a clear process that everybody understands, you're not going to make the decisions that are required. Next, leadership before action. When something happens, it's typically human nature to want to rush in and do something about it. But we need to take that half a step backwards and identify one person with the overall vision for the response, the leader, because they might have seen something or given information that you don't know. Next is structure before scale. Your initial incident management team is likely to be very small, 4 to 6 people. What we want from those 4 to 6 people is a clear understanding of what's happened and what our initial objectives are before you start bringing in lots of other people. Because the shared awareness before decisions, you've got your experienced team members who have knowledge of the facility or the process that needs to be done, and they can identify the gaps. So rather than mobilizing everybody and everything, you can be selective in who you mobilize. Because as it says, discipline drives coordination. People have the necessary authority and the necessary trust to be able to carry out the tasks that they're given. And then last but not least, our people remain the critical resource in this. Good communication, a strong leader, and experienced personnel working towards this common goal. So ask yourself, could you activate your incident management team in the next hour? If you did that, would everybody know their role? Would everybody work from the same picture? And could your team make decisions without perfect information? What I want you to do is not wait for the next incident. My colleague Ines is going to put a link up in the chat now that will take you to a workbook. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you this morning, but the link to this workbook will walk you through how to run these small virtual incident management team exercises. And you could start with a simple one that lasts 30 minutes with 4 people. Just test how you'd contact them, how they would be able to join a meeting. Your incident commander, how would they identify not only what's happened, what their gaps are, but what the initial objectives are? So start slowly. Practice following the plan. We want to make sure that the best virtual incident management teams, they don't rely on technology to create control. They rely on leadership, coordination, discipline, and trust. Now, if you're sat there and you're not sure if you have that ability, the best place to start is with your plan. If you are a member of OSRL, we will do a free complimentary review of your incident of your oil spill contingency plan. You can send it to us. If anybody's interested in that, please contact me afterwards. Okay, and that's the end of our webinar today. I've used all of my time, in fact, extra 30 seconds. So there are no time for questions, but Ines, along with that link you're going to put up to the document, could you also put my email address up there as well? And then people can email me directly with any questions, comments, or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll drop the email in the chat, and everyone can find the link to the workbook that's on our website. So you just have to fill in the form at the bottom of the website page and you'll be able to download it. And also we'll send you an email to you directly at some point this week with a recording of this webinar, so you can always catch up on it as well. Any other questions that you have as well, you can contact OSRL directly via our website. We have a contact form, so you can drop any questions there too.
Perfect. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention this morning. Like I said, virtual incident command systems and incident management teams can work really well, but we need to run through exercises where we test it. The good thing about it is we don't need to set up massive rooms, organize 100 people, make sure they're all fed and watered and anything like that. We can start off small. And if you need ideas on how to start off small, please refer to the workbook or drop me an email. Thank you very much, everyone. You have a great day.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.